Yeah, the bigger story with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and all the corruption with the other foreign governments is the cover up by big tech, Twitter, Facebook, Google, uh, specifically Facebook and Twitter. Here goes.
And I don't blame you for tuning out, and sometimes I tune out too. It's like you got a life, right? You might want to do something. You might want to have dinner with your spouse or get laid. Do people still do that? That's what they were doing back in my day, or whatever it is you might want to do. So, and then we're hit with so much information where you have to know every little detail of everything. So I'm going to try to give you the bare bones on this Hunter Biden thing so that if you get into a conversation with someone about it, you will be able to talk about it functionally. So here's basically what happened. Hunter Biden dropped off a computer at a repair shop in Joe Biden's home state of Delaware in April of 2019. Okay, so this is about a year and a half ago, and that's according to the store's owner. The customer who brought in the water-damaged MacBook Pro, and we believe this to be Hunter Biden, never paid for the service, nor did he retrieve it or a hard drive where the contents of the laptop were stored. And the store owner also says that he repeatedly tried to contact the client. But before returning the gear, the shop owner says that he made a copy of the hard drive and later gave it to former Mayor Rudy Giuliani's lawyer, Robert Costello. So that's kind of interesting that he called the guy who dropped it off many times, which we believe to be Hunter Biden, and then he did return it, it sounds like, but then he also made a copy of it and gave it to Giuliani's lawyer. So he must have seen something on there. That's what it sounds like.
Here's a good point, but you can get pretty tired of politics. You better cover your butt and you better protect yourself because this is big news. This guy is not physically threatened. And now that he's got it to Giuliani, maybe he's not. Giuliani just came out with a video on this and said in no uncertain terms the Bidens have committed crimes and been paid off for those crimes.
And then what we should make note of here, and this is the sort of big part, is that Hunter Biden introduced his then vice president, father, Joe Biden, to a top executive at a Ukrainian energy firm less than a year before Joe Biden pressured government officials in Ukraine into firing the prosecutor who was investigating the company, according to emails that were obtained by the New York Post. And Joe Biden, of course, is claiming that he, quote, never spoke to my son about his overseas business dealings. Of course, Hunter Biden was paid $50,000 a month by Burisma, which is this Ukrainian company, even though he had no expertise, right? He had no expertise.
The letters and emails specifically say that he paid half that money back to his father, specifically.
Expertise whatsoever. So they were obviously buying access to his father. It's just obvious. And of course, many of you, I'm sure, have seen the video where Joe Biden is bragging and laughing about how he got the prosecutor fired. Otherwise, we were going to hold back all of this aid money. So this is a smoking gun. And you could look at this story and you can go, oh, well, this is just sort of dirty politics and nepotism and all that. And by the way, it is dirty politics and nepotism and all that. It is. This is sort of how it all works. I suppose at some level, this is exactly what Trump was talking about in 2016 about draining the swamp, that this stuff shouldn't work this way. Now, that's not me sitting here saying he's never used his influence to help his children, because he obviously has. But if he had done that as president, that's different than doing it as a private businessman, right? Like if you're a hotel magnate and you give your son a job or whatever it might be, well, that's your choice to do it. And then if your son's not qualified, it's not going to work. And if your son is qualified, it is going to work. That's very different than if you work in the government and your son is getting jobs for insane amounts of money, 50 grand a month, when he's not qualified at all, just so those people have access to you as a representative of the U.S. government, in this case as the vice president. So there is stuff here. Now, the bigger part of the story, I think, is sort of the second thing that I want to talk about, which is the censorship around this. Now, we can debate all of the nitty gritty on that. And by the way, I think it's perfectly legit for people.
Now let's back up. Twitter was not allowing anybody to tweet on this and blocking and banning even the private messages from one individual to the next. Not allowing any of this to go out. And Facebook was doing similar things. So those two companies were really abusing their people, clients, and their authority and their monopolies.
People to say, with all the stuff that's going on in the world right now, with lockdowns and COVID and the race stuff and the protests and all of that, that this story is just sort of, 3 weeks before the election, like they're just throwing the kitchen sink at everything and it's a distraction and all that. I think that's a perfectly legit way of looking at things. So that's up for you to decide, right? Like you personally have to decide how important this story is to you. Does it sound like it's seriously crooked? Yeah. Does it sound like this is sort of politics 101? Yeah. Does it sound like there's a cover-up? Yeah. But the bigger story is now this, which is the censorship stuff. So Twitter decided that it would not let people tweet out the link to New York Post. New York Post broke this story, and it would not let people tweet out the link, meaning put it in their newsfeed, nor send it via private direct message. Several people, including the White House press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, were locked out of their accounts. I saw that Jack Posobiec was locked out of his account. A bunch of blue check people were locked out of their account for posting the story. I didn't even try to post it because my feeling was if I get locked out too, it's an endless headache. The story had already risen enough that it was like, okay, enough people are screenshotting it that people are now real.
No, he talks about not only screenshots, but he talks about how this butterfly effect blew up, and it got more and more publicity because people were having one heck of a time getting it out.
Realizing there's a problem here. There was also a Facebook communications guy who tweeted out something to the effect of he's not going to link to it on Facebook, or he's not going to link to it even on Twitter, but that in effect he was saying, but we'll down-regulate the story. So all of the stuff that a bunch of us conspiracy theorists have been talking about on the internet for years, about how they deboost, about how they shadow ban, about how they reorganize search results to make you think a certain thing, it's all coming out to be true. And of course it's all coming out now right before the election. And that is actually why when every 4 years they say, oh, this is the most important election of all time, this probably is, at least within modern times, because it's not just about the battle between, let's say, Trump, which represents some piece of America that we can recognize, versus the far left progressives, right? It's not just that. It's also how we're going to be able to get information going forward. Like Trump is sort of the last stand against big tech. And now I saw a ton of conservatives yesterday saying we have to regulate them. And my feeling is maybe you can break them up. I mean, this is, again, where I'm more of a libertarian, so I would always want the market to do something. By the way, that's why I started locals.com, to give tools to creators so you're not so reliant on big tech. And if you guys haven't checked it out, check out RubinReport.com or download our iOS app or our Google Android.
So he's already into locals.com is pretty good size, and they're trying to get tools into the business hands so they're not they're not being controlled by these big tech companies. And my hat's off to them, and I encourage you to support locals.com. If I had the money, I would fully support it. I need to push it more, obviously. And he's got a valid point.
Android app, and you'll always be able to connect with me, and I'll always be able to connect with you if I ever got booted off these things, and we've given those same tools to any other creator. So I like the market, but I know that the market can't solve everything. That's why I've always said that's why I don't consider myself a pure libertarian. I got into that a little bit last week with Joe Jorgensen, the libertarian presidential candidate. So I saw a lot of conservatives saying, okay, regulate, and this is a dangerous game. You just have to be aware of what the game is, even though I understand the impulse there. Because the thing is, okay, so let's say you regulate. Let's say just today, right, the Republican-led Senate and the president decide to regulate.
It's not going to happen. There's going to be a lot of pushback. There'll be some regulation. There'll be some oversight. There'll be some give and take. But you're not going to be able to regulate it fully. It's just not possible. In a free market, it shouldn't be. But these major technical companies, Google, Facebook, Twitter, etc., YouTube, as part of Google, they need to be pushed so they're not such monopolistic companies. And they need to be called on the carpet on what they're doing, because it's not right. And especially about how they've manipulated materials, facts, and the search engines to bring about political votes and policies and education, to say the least. I mean, that's the least that they should be called on the carpet on. But they obviously have played their own game politically, and they're getting away with it. Raj Martin, Village, Montana. Good day. And supportlocal.com. Good day. So there's his picture. Dave Rubin launches Creator Local Hub, Creator Local Hub, Locals, excuse me. Creator Hub Locals. So it's locals.com, and there it is. Here's his picture. So we'll take it from there.